Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Today's guest is Mr. Ric Ptak. You guys have heard from Rick before. Rick and I are going to be talking about the concept, that you deal with as a cabinet maker when we've got a facility and we've got machinery and we've got people and a lot of moving parts. We've got inventory hanging off the walls. We've got inventory stacked up. We've got clients stacked up. We've got installers. And so we quite often come up against the question, do I need more people? Do I need better processes, or do I need new machines, shiny new machines? And, if you've gone to any of the trade shows in the last little while, you've seen some fantastic machines. Do you need that machine, or do you need people, or do you need process? So we're going to dig into that question. Now, the other thing that's important is Rick and I are going to be running the next Foreman 101 training. So we'll probably talk about that on today's call as well. And keep in mind, the Foreman 101 training, the actual kickoff for that is a free information session. And the reason that's important is because our hope is that you, as the owner, as the leader, actually have your foreman or your sub-assembly lead in that information call with you, because that's how you get it started. That's how you get the conversation started. You get the conversation started with your team. If your team is interested in and bought in, mentally bought in, that's great. Let us know. If they're not bought in, that's okay too. But now we've got the conversation started for you. And you can slowly work on that in a way that, is right for your crew. Anyways, let's get to the interview with Mr. Ric Ptak. There's always a ton of wisdom here. Love talking to Rick, and I'm sure you'll get lots from today's episode. We'll see you on the other side. Mr. Ric Ptak.
Hello, Dom. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to have the most guested guest of all guests back in the guest spot. Cabinet Maker Profit System.
Hopefully I'm not wearing out my welcome.
No, you make me sound smarter as long as you do the talking and I do the hosting.
Hopefully we complement each other. So
hopefully, yeah. Today we got kind of a juicy topic, but before I'll restate the topic in a moment, but some people may not have met you because we always have new listeners to the show. And so they don't know who Ric Ptak is. Ric Ptak, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all of these forward-facing finished woodworking experts all around the world?
Right. Well, I'm a cabinet maker by trade since probably early 80s. And so a woodworker, commercial woodwork mostly. So, I understand that sandbox, that playground really, really well, being an apprentice and then working my way up to foreman and supervisor, and understanding the interactions between all the stakeholders, architects and designers, general contractors, other contractors for a project, suppliers, the mill workers, the people actually doing the project, and trying to schedule and coordinate all that with tight time frames and tight budgets. And it's an environment I'm used to. I grew up in it. So, and then later on, of course, became a plant manager for a firm I was working in, after doing a foreman and supervisor. So I was in charge of a rather large plant. So, I've got also some lean training, black belt, master black belt in the continuous.
I would call that some training. Yeah.
Some training. Yeah. So, that's kind of where I'm at now. And so the last, probably 10 years, I've helped companies coach and mentor them to become more productive, in the manufacturing sector, helped with plant layouts, helped with supervisory training, job instruction, job relation, job methods, TWI training.
You're doing a plant layout.
I've got a big smorgasbord of things I can offer, because I've got some experience and I've helped implement a lot of improvements with different shops, which, I'll bring up, as we go forward and speak about things. We can speak intelligently about what has worked in companies and what they struggle with and what their barriers were. And here's where we help them, help folks become more productive.
So Rick, there's you mentioned plant layouts, and there's somebody you're working with, right? And we're obviously not going to mention names. We won't name names, but you're doing a plant layout right now for somebody who's, they've got this greenfield opportunity. They're moving into a new space. What a great time to look at machinery and movement and people and equipment and racking and
exactly. Yeah. Electrical layout and where are you going to put equipment and how's the flow going to be optimized, and so there's less walking and you've got things where you need them at point of use, and machine setup, reducing machine setups, and all those types of things. They all add to reducing the wastes, and improve the process.
Yeah. Hey, let me go back for a second before we get off in the technical talk. And I just want to take you back to the beginning. I don't know. I've got nostalgia in my mind right now. Two questions for you. Do you remember the first day you went into your first job as a woodworker? Did you think you'd continue? And then second, do you remember when they asked you to become a manager, a leader? I don't know if it was for a sub-assembly or if it was to just be the foreman. But do you remember those two events in your life?
I do. So the first question, do I remember when I first walked into, wood shop, and I actually already, before I took the job, I had talked to the owner several weeks before that and said, look, I'm interested in woodworking. Would you take me on as an apprentice when the time is right? Because
wow, you're a dream conversation.
I was already thinking ahead, saying, look, I want to get a trade. I want to get an apprenticeship. So I want to lock myself into a company, at least verbally, where they said, yeah, if you work out and if you're the right guy, we would take you on as apprentice. So yes, I knew that I was always going to at least get my apprenticeship in woodworking and cabinet making. Whether I was going to be doing that 40 years later, like I'm doing now, I didn't know that, but that's fine, because I don't think anybody's got a 40-year plan. You might have a 2, 5, and 10-year plan, or a 1, 2, and 5-year plan. I think that's where my head was at, the 1, 2, and 5-year plan. And then the next question you had was, do I remember the first time when they asked me to be a shop foreman?
Yeah.
And I do remember that as well. And that was after I had my cabinet making ticket already, journeyman papers.
Okay.
And but I took it, and yeah, it was more responsibility and came with a little bit more money, but I certainly didn't have any idea what it entailed.
Did they train you? Did they just say, hey, you're the guy now? Or did you get training?
And there was really very minimal training. I mean, I wouldn't call it a training. It was more just some bullet points, some guidance here and there, and then just do it. I was sort of a guy that took initiative anyway, and kind of went and did things to be proactive. So I think that was a lot of why I was chosen to be the foreman. But formal training, any sort of mentoring or coaching, no, that did not happen. So it was all by the school of hard knocks, doing it wrong, and then learning from that experience. Next time, don't do it that way.
Next time, don't do it that way. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good that you learned that way, because you now run the foreman training here at this show. You do the Foreman 101 training. We actually have another one coming up. When's that going to be?
I think it starts in September 20th.
Yeah. Well, we'll have an information session beforehand. Maybe if anybody's interested, reach out to me. Send me Rick, I'll just do the normal thing here. Folks, if you do want to take part in Rick's Foreman 101 training, shoot me a text message, 604-837-8361. Just let me know. But Rick, today we're here to talk about the question, almost the eternal question. The eternal question, kind of along the lines of, who was the better singer for Van Halen? David Lee Roth or the other guy?
Yeah.
And now a whole bunch of people are frustrated listening to this episode because they have their opinions on it. But listen, when we're looking at our shop and we're thinking about efficiencies, we're faced with a couple of different decisions. One of those decisions is just bring on more people. One of them is to have better processes. And the other one, the fun one, is let's buy a new machine. So let's put that on the table as our topic of the day, and start to pick it apart. If I came to you, Rick, and I said, look, I've got this shop and I've got a budget for another X $1,000. I'm not sure if I should hire some more people, if I should make my processes better, or maybe I'm just going to buy a new machine. Where would the conversation go from there?
Well, I think we have to understand what the intentional objectives are behind each of those, three of those things. So, I mean, if for instance, you are busy and slammed and there's lots of work and you just need to hire more bodies so that you can get the work done, that might be a short-term solution.
Mm.
to something that's happening because you just happen to get a lot of jobs in the schedule.
Or a bunch of jobs that were
Yeah,
on delay got pushed back and suddenly
exactly.
all came live at the same time.
So, now the chances of hiring the right person and finding the right people is probably going to be difficult in this, and we all know that folks are looking for folks, but they're hard to find.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we have to understand that that's what you're looking for, that may be what you need right now, but in the long term, do you need to be improving your processes, and do you need a piece of equipment? I mean, you need to understand the return on investment for all three of those
Right.
things. You need to
Yeah.
understand what is the intent. Because if you do need a new piece of equipment at some point in time, because it can speed up your operations, rather than using a stroke sander, for those folks that, maybe old timers now like me knew what a stroke sander was, instead of, maybe we can buy a wide belt sander to do a lot of that, then it's going to speed up processes to some degree. But you also have to remember, if you're purchasing a new piece of equipment, you probably have to hire somebody to operate it.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to take somebody from within your organization to operate it, now you're going to have to plug that hole. So maybe buying a new piece of equipment, you have to hire somebody as well anyway. So you really need to understand why it is you want to do each of those things or simultaneously.
You need a
But
plan.
remember,
You need a plan.
if you're, yeah, pardon?
You need a plan.
You need a plan.
Yeah.
But if we think about it, and I've done a little research before you and I got together on this podcast, Dom, is hiring, only 50% of new hires actually hang around.
That's
So you
true.
only have a 50-50 shot with hiring somebody new, that they're actually going to work out in the long term.
Mm.
So the odds aren't all that great. Now, if I told you, Dom, if you bought this new white belt sander or this new nested base CNC router to increase your efficiency, there's only a 50%, 50-50 that it's going to do you much good. You're going to say, well, that's not good
I'm
enough.
not going to buy it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Why do you want to sell me a $250,000 or $500,000 machine, depending on what we're talking about? But it's a whack load of money if it's only a 50-50 chance, right? Where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck a lot of times is looking at continuous improvement initiatives and looking at your processes and trying to make those better. There's a bit better return on that sometimes than going out and trying to hire somebody and hopefully they'll fit,
or buying a shiny new tool.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head. You need a plan. What's your 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan, or what's your 2, 5, and 10-year plan of the growth of your company? I mean, we all understand that equipment gets older, it needs to be replaced. So I have to have that plan in place already. I hope most companies have that plan in place. You're not going to run a piece of equipment until it's absolutely dead, and then I have to purchase a new one, because there's going to be this big lag there of up to get everything up and going again. So you have to transition. You have to know how you're going to transition these things. So you need a plan. It's the same when you're going to hire somebody. What's your intent for hiring somebody? What's the objective? Am I replacing somebody?
Am I throwing bodies at the problem?
Because do I need more folks just simply because last year my sales were 3 million, and I've done some changes. So this year we're expecting 3.5 or 4 or 5 million, and then 2 years down the road we'll be at 7 million. Well, obviously you're going to have to plug some holes along the way, but you better be also training the existing folks in that scenario as well, not just expecting to hire new folks, because it's about training your existing folks. And here's another sad statistic, unfortunately, is that the root cause of most hiring is drastically poor retention. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, that means, why do you have to hire more people? You must have lost some folks, or, and you haven't been, training them, nurturing them, improving the culture, all those things that it takes to keep them loyal. Now you've got to replace them.
Yeah.
Well, if you're bringing new folks in and you don't change the culture, you don't improve the culture, then how likely are those folks to stick around?
And those,
so again, it's a complicated thing to answer, right? You have to look at all those things.
Well, it's complicated, but like many things, the approach is to be systematic, to go ahead and do things. People who were on the, Rick, you and I are both on the contractor strategy group. The other day, I posted a picture there of what seemed to be a pretty complicated little image full of code words. But once you understand what the words are and what the image means, it's coded. It's a very simple approach to things. Sure. It's just understand that this will lead to that. And if you have a gap in this, then you're going to have a gap in that. Yeah. But going about it in a systematic fashion allows you to tackle those things and have that confidence in your business.
What you're talking about then really is a roadmap. You need a strategic roadmap of how you're going to grow your company and all those components that are going to help the company grow. Hiring being one, improving your processes being another, training folks, new and existing employees, new equipment purchases. Those are all part of the big roadmap strategic plan going forward. And you got to know when to pull the trigger, how you're going to pull the trigger, and set things up so that there's less of a problem when you pull the trigger on those things you're going to make happen, right?
There's something that I learned, and I didn't come up with it. One of my clients came up with it and said it to me, and I thought it was one of the most brilliant things I heard. Now, in the world of cabinetry, he's on the architectural millwork side, right? So complex millwork packages is their specialty. Yeah. But sort of this epiphany or nirvana, like this moment of like the light went off in his head. We were in a coaching meeting and he said, Dom, I finally get it. My people are actually my tools. He used to be the king of, he could run the edge bander faster than anybody else. He could knock together cabinets fast. He could install better than anybody else. And that's why, of course, he was the owner. Owners always work at a higher rate of production than anybody else. But even I think when he was an apprentice, he was probably wired that way. But it's a different shift when you become a business, when you start to see the world as I'm a business person who just happens to run a cabinet shop. You also get stuck in that place where you're trying to manage people instead of managing processes. And he finally got that breakthrough to say, look, my people are actually my tools, not my tools are my tools.
Yeah, well, when we talk about, factors that influence productivity, being efficient, having a fair, a consistently high profit margin, all those things, having your sales where you want them to be, that's productivity. There's three things that affect that. It's people, performance, and processes. It's not people, performance, processes, and machines. Because as you say, machines though are, they help, they're a tool, but you really need the people, you need the processes, and you need the performance from those folks performing at a optimal level so that you can get the gains that you need. And performing at an optimal level, there's a lot of things that relate to that and contribute to that, loyalty, training, culture, how motivated your folks are, how good is the communication, listening and speaking with, to those folks, and understanding that all plays a big part in the whole culture and, engaging those folks. Because if they're engaged and they understand and they're motivated and there's an intent there, the performance is going to be at a higher level versus, we're just telling folks what to do on a daily basis. And if it's not good enough, then we're going to, call them up on the carpet and say, you're not good enough, your performance sucks, or whatever the case may be. I mean, this is why we are offering, for those folks who see the value in it, the foreman and the leadership training, because really leadership is about attracting and encouraging willing followers. Right. So if you have some great leaders within your organization, some great supervisors, the owner's job is half done, right? Because then the owner can focus on, hey, how am I going to grow the business? Where are my clients going to come from? 3 months. So
the opposite's also true. If you have a company full of untrained leaders who are doing their best, let's assume everybody who works for us is doing their best, but they're untrained. They're going to do what they learned to do at their kitchen table, what they learned to do at the last place they worked. And if they're bringing that into your company, how is that impacting the way you want things to run? Culture is the glue that holds together your company. It's soft, right? It's a soft skill and it's difficult. It's hard to put your hands on and it's hard to train on culture. But that's why we talk about having the right attitudes from the owner, attitudes from the leadership, the kind of attitude of taking responsibility, being proactive, being a positive company. Those things lend themselves to having the right kind of culture and the right kind of attitude in the business versus versus a blame culture. And I know you've got some things to talk about on the no blame culture side.
Yeah, we talk about no blame and respect, and just to go back to your point about attitude. So, what affects attitude is behaviors. So attitude is, like you say, it's soft. I can't put my finger on it. It's a feeling, it's a perspective, it's a perception. But I can see behaviors. So if somebody behaves a certain way, they're coming in late every day. They don't really have a good reason. They just, they slept in. I'm not really motivated.
Car trouble again.
Yeah, car trouble, whatever. I mean, excuses, right? It's a behavior. They're late. But why? I'm gonna ask you, why are they behaving that way? It's their attitude. Well, okay, so we need to do something. We either have to have better expectations as supervisors to each individual and have a heart to heart with them, and treat people as individuals and let them know in advance about what's going to happen if they hit certain milestones, and if they don't, this is what's going to happen. This is what we talk about: communication, listening and communicating then to them. And this is what we go over in that foreman training, right? So no blame culture too is, no blame environment. Something happens, obviously something happens, and we have to fix it because the customer's wanting it a certain way, quality wise, or by a certain date, or whatever the case may be, and something goes wrong. Yes, we have to fix it. But getting away from who did it wrong. Oh, Dom screwed up again, in the edge band. Or
probably.
Well, maybe Dom's doing it the way he was taught. So I mean, are we retraining him, or are we training him in a better way, or because something has changed, did we train him now on the new process? It always comes back to the leader, the supervisor. If the worker isn't doing something, then you always have to go back to the supervisor and ask them, why isn't the worker doing it the way it's supposed to be done? It always falls to the supervisor to make sure that that's done. And so the supervisor then has to understand, where do I need to make a different process here? Do I need to have more training? Do I have to look at the process? Do I have to engage with the folks better so that they understand there's, we need to get it to a certain delivery for the customer? What are they looking? What are they expecting? So again, those are ways you need to. And this, when I became a foreman, listen, I wasn't a good communicator, so I had trouble with that. I had to wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking about this, as you're describing that, going to the supervisor about one of the workers, the way they're doing their job, it occurred to me that meetings are a big part of leadership. And just let me ask, how did you feel about meetings when you first started in a leadership position in a cabinet shop?
Well, meetings were like, again, I gotta sit in a meeting because we got work to do.
Yeah, exactly. I got
windows
need to go, or door. Yeah.
I have to get stuff to that piece of equipment so that tomorrow it can be sanded, because tomorrow afternoon it has to go to the finishing shop.
And these guys want a meeting? What are they, crazy?
But even, as I progressed, got better and smarter, then my meetings, sometimes I would get out of the meetings because is there an agenda for this meeting? No. Well, then I'm not going to be there. Sorry. You send me an agenda ahead of time and I'll look at it, and where I fit in, then I'll be there, but then I'll get out of there again. So an hour-long meeting, maybe I only need to be there 10 minutes.
Right.
And maybe I need to be there 15 minutes after the meeting started, because that's the agenda item that I need to speak to. And then I can get the heck out of there. So, again, that's a time management, although time management is more priority management, as you know. So manage your priorities. Don't sit in a 1 hour meeting if you can only contribute for 10, 15 minutes.
Well, that's where I was going with this, is how important is communication by meetings? Because I listen, you would think that I'm a big fan of meetings. I'm not. I hate wasting time, and I hate wasted time in meetings. I like short, punchy, factual meetings that get done what they got to get done, and then let's get back to work.
Yeah. And the meetings that I would hold as a supervisor or foreman would be more one-on-one on the shop floor with the particular individual that needs some additional guidance or wants to share something back to me on how to improve the process. So those are effective, 5-minute meetings where we can talk, just about that, really in a focused format about what it is we want to accomplish, rather than having a meeting of 5 or 10 guys for 1 hour, and then we're only going to talk about this one improvement for 2 or 3 minutes within the meeting. Those aren't really effective.
Well, it depends. It depends on the level. There are some,
you need to have effective meetings, and how can you have more effective meetings? That's something that's a process as well that you can work out. And I have helped companies.
Yeah,
I have helped companies, create effective meetings, and with an agenda that goes out at least a day ahead of time, so that people can review what's on that agenda, then come prepared to the meeting. And then instead of an hour and a half meeting, we can do it in 45 minutes or 40 minutes because everybody comes prepared.
And everybody gets what they need. Yeah.
Everybody gets what they need. So again, when we talk about respect, a no blame environment, we don't want to blame folks. We want to understand that something went wrong. And we want to say, okay, what went wrong? What's the root cause? The process isn't that clear, or we were missing some information. Well, then let's fix the process. Let's get a clearer process in place, and then let's train everybody who has to do that process so that they understand what the quality level needs to be. And that's where we talk about respect. Respect really means taking care of one another. So me as a leader or a supervisor, it behooves me to take care of all my workers.
Right.
And then I'll get the same in return over time. If I'm consistent and congruent in that message to them, I'll get respect back from the folks. And we're going to look out for each other. We're going to have better communication. We're going to listen better. And we're going to focus on what the customer requirements are. Because at the end of the day, this is what you're in business for. You have a customer and they want something. And your job is to deliver what the customer wants. And we have to figure out how to do that.
That's what the whole show's about from a business perspective. Yeah, that's right. So I feel like I took you off the path you were on there. We were talking about, originally, if I'm going to make some changes in the company, do I need more people? Do I need better processes? Do I need that shiny new machine that I just saw at the trade show?
Yeah, and you may need all three, or you may need only two, or you may only need one. So again,
or you might need different.
Maybe
the new machine means a different person or a differently trained person.
Yeah, you may need a machine, but you don't need the machine for a year. And those companies that are down a continuous improvement lean path, they're thinking that way. Whereas other folks who haven't really done much with lean or continuous improvement because they're just working, they may not think about an edge bander that is getting tired and maybe needs replacement a year. They keep running that edge bander until it just dies. Oh, now we need an edge band. So now I've got to scramble. And now I lose precious time, precious schedule, resources are wasted. And I never get that back. Time is wasted, time I can't get back. So again, we need to have a plan. You need to plan ahead at some level, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, make a plan, understand where where are your shortcomings going to come from.
There's, part of this plan as well, Rick, is there's also a business decision to be made. Like an edge bander at the end of its life is worth X.
It's a boat anchor. At best, it's a boat anchor.
Right. But an edge bander with 2 years left still has some value. Yeah. And if you could extract that, a lot of farmers even do this, right? They know that when they've got certain kinds of equipment, if they sell it at a certain point before it needs to go, they can get that value back, which they apply to the next piece of equipment, and that's how you grow. But if you keep trying to beat the same piece of equipment for too long, ultimately you've got it down to zero. But again, it comes back to having that plan and really mapping out what does your shop look like now, and what do you want it to look like in the future? And based on that and all of the other factors, like the people that you've got, the kind of clients you're dealing with, kind of process you have in place, what's a wise and intelligent way to grow the business so that you're proactive and not feeling reactive in it?
Yeah, I think that has a lot of merit. And then just understanding that, your people that you currently have, they're just as important to put a lot of thought into maintaining and improving the culture for them so that you can keep those folks loyal, right? So rather than looking to hire a new person, consider how you can help your current employees to be more effective. If they're engaged in that discussion, they're more likely to want to stay because they're excited by that, right?
I've got a question for you. And I actually, you and I have had this discussion many times, and we've had it with other people that we've worked with. When we talk to a business owner who's interested in continuous improvement, I mean, they're not interested in continuous improvement. They're interested in their shop running better. The tool is continuous improvement.
Yeah.
But one of the feedback pieces that we hear back from the owners is, my guys think all I want them to do is work harder. They think that lean is about, you're already laughing. For those of you who are listening to this as an audio, Rick and I are recording video as well, but the feedback that owners are getting from the floor is that, oh, the boss just wants lean manufacturing because they want us to work harder. Give us a little thought around that, some perspective, because the people listening are going to encounter this when they go back onto their floor or talk to maybe their untrained foreman now.
Sure. So, I mean, for those folks who don't really know what lean is, I mean, I give you the textbook definition that I always talk about, and that's reducing or eliminating waste so that every process step adds value for the customer, right? And that's what lean is. Now, beyond that, yes, what does that mean for the worker on the floor? If somebody's we've got somebody coming and you're going to learn about lean. They just want us to work harder. It's not about working harder. It's about working more efficiently. It's about working smarter.
Right.
And really, we drive it right down to each individual person on the floor. And we say, because they're asking, what's in it for me? If I do this lean thing or I participate in that, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for them is, they're going to work more effectively. They're going to have to take less steps, less walking, right? And it's going to make their jobs easier, less stressful. Who doesn't want to at least investigate that? Who doesn't want to at least learn about that, right? If it's going to make my job less stressful, it's going to make it easier. There's more consistency to what I have to do with my processes. It's going to make sure that I hit the quality on each piece that I do so that the customer doesn't send it back, because those things are costly. That customer doesn't accept it, sends it back, now you got to remake it. So that's what it does at the level of the worker. And that's where we try to engage the folks in. It's not just about driving it from the top down. It's about engaging the folks and asking them what's important to you. What barriers do you have? What causes you grief on the shop floor? The folks will tell you, because in their little area, what they do, I'm constantly waiting for that piece of equipment, or I'm constantly waiting for information, or the shop drawings aren't clear, or the hardware isn't here, or the laminate or the wood isn't here yet, the panels, I can't do anything, I have to stop, the hardware isn't here, all those things. Well, that's where we need to look at the processes to make those things go smoother. And then there's more effectiveness and more efficiency, and you have a greater sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. You have less stress. So that's really what it is at the level of the workers. But we have to engage the whole business, meaning the ownership, the management, upper management, the middle management, and then the foreman and the supervisor and the folks on the floor, to understand what those things are with respect to lean and continuous improvement, and then try to drive out some of those wastes. So when we talk about, I'll talk about some contracts that I have now with folks where we're looking at, they send me some videos, 15, 20-minute video of a bottleneck process that's going on currently in their facility. So we're watching the workers, but we're also watching the product as it moves through each work center. And I tell you, there's a lot of opportunity there. Folks are walking around looking for stuff, getting a dolly, delivering a dolly, waiting for material, waiting for a piece of equipment. Just taking tools. A lot of additional steps that don't have to be taken. Bring everything closer, have it organized so that the product moves quickly through the process. Because think about it, when your processes or when your product is queued, work in progress, if it's queued sitting there, the company's spending money because it's sitting there. The longer that it sits there, it's not going to get to the customer, right? So we have to reduce the lead time. Lead time is simply the time from when the work order hits the floor to when I deliver it and install it. And if and a lot of places now, you ask them for a kitchen, you say, what's their lead time? 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And I'm shaking my head as it doesn't take 8 or 12 weeks to make a kitchen. Come on. Why does it take that long? Because of the inefficiencies that are currently happening in the facility. Oh, well, we're just overbooked. Well, listen, if you're overbooked, why'd you take so much work? Space it out. Space it out in a way that, look, I can get this kitchen through in 2 weeks. 2 weeks should be a kitchen, 2 to 3 weeks, and then I'm moving it through and I get the next one.
Yeah.
This is really the goal of where it needs to be. So if you're not currently at 2 or 3 weeks, you have an opportunity. That's simply all I'm saying. It's not that you have a bad operation. I'm not trying to, throw that down anybody's throat. But you do have an opportunity to say, if it's 6 or 8 weeks, how do we make it 6 weeks? If it's 8 weeks, how do we make it 6? And once we have it consistently at 6, how do we get it to 5 or 4? Making improvements slowly over time by engaging with folks.
And let me add to that, because I've heard this part of this conversation many, many times. And the part of the conversation is, but Don, you don't understand. The builders made us wait. 3 different builders told us they would be ready on time, and due to supply issues or timing or whatever, they all hit at the same time. I want to point out to people listening, Rick and I understand that. But even when you think about the day that kitchen goes into production, how can you make it more efficient so that it goes as smoothly as possible? The second thing is that what we're talking about here in terms of lean, more people, better processes, or new machines, does not only apply to the floor. It applies to the front of the process as well. You might call it the head office, or upstairs, or whatever, the front of the building, however your shop is laid out. But you have a process as well. We all have a process, from marketing to sales to the administration that gets a job from sold until it's nested and until the plans go to the floor. Maybe the place you need to be looking for waste or overage is in your front end operations, right? Mm-hmm. So what Rick and I are talking about here today sounds a lot like we're talking about the shop, but it's not. It could also be your other operations too.
Administrative and service oriented businesses can make inroads by
bottleneck and drafting, bottleneck and engineering,
lean tools, continuous improvement tools as well. It's all about driving out waste, identifying the waste, identifying non-value added activities versus value added activities, and then having a plan. How are we going to reduce or minimize those things? Yeah. And we talk a lot about that at the supervisors course, where we start training the supervisor to understand what is value added and non-value added activities, what are the wastes, so that they can go out intelligently on the floor and in the front office and look for areas where you might be able to make some improvements.
Hey, what gets covered in the foreman training? Like, we've got the next one coming up in September. We're going to be putting an invitation out to everybody. We actually already have a waiting list going. Yes. Anybody who wants to be on the waiting list, make sure you shoot me a note. But Rick, what do we cover in the foreman training?
Well, I'll give you a couple of dragon's eggs, if you will.
And I love that.
For those
dragon's eggs
don't know what dragon's eggs
are.
You might have to take the foreman course, because they'll talk about what dragon's eggs are.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talk about is the 5 Ps. If you don't know what the 5 Ps are, it's about being proactive. And the 5 Ps are prior planning prevents poor performance. So again, it's about having a plan. It's about understanding, the expectations that a supervisor has within the organization, and different companies are going to have different expectations for their foreman. But I would suggest that if the foreman spends a lot of time in front of their computer answering emails, and a lot of time on their phone answering texts, and a lot of time on their phone answering calls, that is not the best use of their time, because again, those are non-value added activities. It doesn't advance the work that's going on within the administrative side or the shop. So again, you want that minimal, that time spent doing that. If there's a lot of time spent by the foreman doing that, you may need another person, another support person to fulfill that role, because the foreman's job, the supervisor's job, is really, they need to be on the shop floor 80% of the time, Dom. I mean, there's no other way around it. And 80% of the time, some of that could be they're actually doing one-on-one training, or they're organizing training by one of the other, experienced workers to be, deliver the training to some of the more or less.
They're getting the most out of the people on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's giving those folks everything they need to succeed. Not just, all the material on the information, the tools are, all the tools are sharp and running, but it's the training. It's the knowledge of what's value added and what's non-value added activities, and where can I identify some of this, and where can I drive out some of the wastes. So we work a lot on that. We work a lot on the development of people, right? And so that's really you asked me what lean was in continuous improvement, and I gave you the definition, but there's a secret sauce. And the secret sauce for lean and continuous improvement is development of people. You develop your folks. It's like you're communicating better with, you're listening to them more, you're providing training, you're providing your feedback, and you're working together, you're engaging them, and you're empowering them as you see fit, because some of the folks will have a little more initiative or want to try something. And if they say, look, I've got an idea here, Dom, for an improvement. If we did this and we change this, if you give me an hour, sometime this week, and I can make this jig or do this, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'll give you an hour tomorrow or the day after, go ahead and do it. And then let's see how it works out.
Yeah.
That's empowering folks. And when the person if they bring the suggestion to the table,
then they're bought in.
They've got the buy-in. They want to do it, rather than me or you or the foreman come to them and say, look, I think you should do this, change this, do this, cut this down here. They're going to say, yeah, but you're not here every day doing it like I am.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who does it every day. I know what might work, and here's my suggestion. So again, it's talking about those improvements and engaging the folks and having that good dialogue with the folks.
Yeah.
Right. So that's we talk a lot about that, the expectations of the foreman. We talk about continuous improvement, some of the, getting their head wrapped around, value added and non-value added and waste. We talk about creating a training schedule and how you should do that. And we talk about how you should train folks, what are the right steps to take to create a training document, whether that's a standard operating procedure, whether that's visual, you take a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is create standards. And so if you're creating a standard and you have a standard way of doing this, this is the way you do it. So we talk a lot about those things, right?
Yeah. Let me just do a little transition here. You and I have talked about this introductory meeting that happens, and some people are like, yeah, I just want to do the foreman training. I think we need everybody coming to the intro meeting because of the buy-in that you just talked about. Because if you remember back when we first started running these foreman trainings, we would talk to the owners and they would say, well, you know what, this training seems very good for my people. I'm going to put them in. And then they would walk out to the floor and say, you're going to be in training next week. Yep. And the guy on the floor goes, what are you talking about? I mean, yeah, thanks. I'm glad I'm doing training, but it didn't have the right click. It just didn't click right. And you and I went back and we looked at our process and we decided, what we're going to do is let's do the information session first. So for people listening who have any interest at all, let me tell you why we actually do the information session. We do the information session because you as the owner have the opportunity to bring your floor leaders in. You've got a sub-assembly person, you've got a foreman, you've got whatever your leadership team on the floor looks like. You've got a chance to bring them into this information meeting and literally sit around the table with you. Do the call in your boardroom. Put out you can do it off the computer, you can do it off a phone if you want, however you do it, but have everybody that you think you want on the training in that room listening to the call. There's no pressure, just listen to the call. Yeah, and then you have a chance to decide as a team, hey, what did you think about what Rick and Dom talked about? This is you now, the owner, facilitating it with your team. And they're going to go, you know what, I don't think that's for us. And you can say, okay, well, tell me why. And you can have that conversation. Other teams are going to go, you know what, this is exactly what we need. Let's do this. And now you've got a team that's bought in, that wants to be there, that's excited to be there, and they're open to learning. And so then Rick can do his magic and walk people through all these tools. So I guess from here, let's start to wind things down, Rick.
Okay.
The information session is coming, but you have to be invited to it. We can't just do it as an open cattle call on the internet, or we'll get slammed. So the way to get on that call is just let us know, and we'll send you an email invitation. There's quite a few of you who are already on that list, and so you've already got the email. But if you haven't received the email yet, send a text message to me. My cell phone number is 604-837-8361, and just say, Dom, let's talk about the foreman training, and then we'll get you on that list. There's an email coming to some of you already about that September date. We want to get you in there as soon as possible so that you have time to schedule it. Rick, any final closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, everybody's at a different evolutionary stage in their business, right? As far as is continuous improvement and lean and supervisor training the right thing at this point in time. One thing to keep in mind, and I always tell companies this when I, start and engage them in the discussion, is, you're always trying to get the market share, within your region. There's competition out there. You've got competitors. And the thing is, if you're not thinking about continuous improvement at some level, not doing something with it as a company, you run the risk of losing market share. Because think of it this way: what if your competitor is and you're not? In a year from now, their processes are getting better, more efficient. They can sharpen their pencil and actually reduce the costs to their estimates are lower than yours. And then you're scratching your head, and if you get to see their estimate, you say, well, how can they do it for that price? And I had that conversation many times with folks. They've got some competitor out there that's underbidding them. And they said, they're never going to stay in business, a year, 2 or 3 down the road. And I said, well, how do you know that? Maybe they're doing something better than you, but you might learn from it. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. 15 years later, you're still having that same discussion.
It's about, consider doing some continuous improvement, whether it's this or something else, but think about it, because if you don't do it, your competitor is, and you're going to lose market share in a year or 2 down the road. So, there's opportunity for you to always raise the bar with your company, with your folks.
Well, Rick, thank you very much for being on the show. As always, I appreciate it. Love your insights, your wisdom.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, again, if you want to be on that information call, listen, something that we didn't mention: every company that joins the foreman training can have up to 3 people there. 3 people at a time. That's why we limit it to 6 companies per class. And
we're suggesting that the owner and their leaders are there, because it's important that the owner gets the same information that the people that are absorbing the material, so that now there isn't this disconnect. That's right. It's very important the owners there as well.
That's right. And the information call is the first step. Let me talk about, and I know that we're going long on this, but even if your team comes together and listens to the information call, looks at you as the owner and says, yeah, we're not interested, that's okay. And the reason it's okay is because you've now opened up the conversation. Rick and I are going to run this training again next year and again after that. And you'll have your chance to finally get your team in there. But let's open up the conversation. So if you think your team's going to be resistant, that's even more reason to have them in there, because you can start the conversation about a solution in the future. Rick, let's wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, you. Rick.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well. Thank you, Mr. Ric Ptak. Thanks for walking us through that very interesting deep dive into, really just bringing efficiency into the company, especially as we look at floor operations, as we look at some of the challenges that we deal with here in the cabinetry industry. And again, I say cabinetry, furniture making, millwork, architecture, millwork, log playground furniture. I know there's a couple of you out there that do that. If you're dealing in finished wood, and if you're dealing with people, and if you're dealing with machines, then today was a good episode for you. You also heard Rick and I talk about the upcoming foreman training. Looking forward to having you there. Just in case you missed it during the show, if you're interested in attending at least the information call, which is where it starts, the information call is happening here pretty quickly. So you need to be on the list. Send me a text message to get on that list. And then that way we'll get you, we'll email you back the info. My number is 604-837-8361. And in the text message, say, Dom, let's talk about foreman training, and then I'll know right away to get you the information about that. Okay, looking forward to having you there. Folks, I hope you're getting lots of information here. Please remember, I would love to get feedback from you, not for me, so that others out there who are looking for similar information recognize that this is a great show to listen to with great information. You got an inside scoop with Ric Ptak there talking about how to make cabinet shop operations leaner, more efficient, more effective, and ultimately more profitable for you. So if you like that kind of stuff, and if you like the show, leave some feedback. We'd love it. Thanks very much, folks. We'll talk to you in the next episode.